to Mao. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Let's Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Daniel Starkand. Daniel, I believe you've got a friend. Do you want to introduce your friend to us tonight?
That's right. It's been a while, but I got my old friend here. I've missed him dearly. It's great to bring him out for the first time this season. My old pal, the Broom here. I feel a little weird doing it after a 2-game sweep, but at the same time, it is the Giants, so like that counts the same as like a normal 3-game sweep. I feel like so. I'm happy to see him. It's been a while, and more importantly, I'm happy the Dodgers beat the Giants to allow this to happen.
Absolutely. Dodgers first place in the National League West, the best record in the National League. And like you said, a 2-game sweep. I'm sure there's going to be people saying, does that count? It's against the Giants, and so any chance that we get to take a little bit of a victory lap around the Giants and their fans, we're going to do that. And so tonight, that's the plan. Dodgers have yet another off day. I believe they're about to embark on, is it like 31 games in 31 days or something like that? They're going to play a bunch of...
It is. There's one off day mixed in there, but they also have a doubleheader. So yeah, a lot of baseball coming up in the next month.
And this for a team that feels like I think they've had like 3 off days in the last week. And so today, sort of the last little end of a warm-up stretch, if you will. But so we're going to look back at that 2-game set against the Giants. Obviously, the biggest 2 games of the season thus far. This is the team that beat them from the National League for the National League West crown. Last year, the Dodgers got 2 games at home. We'll look ahead to the Cubs, and then we'll get to some questions as well. Lots of Justin Turner trade replacement questions on there. Not that anybody's trading Justin Turner, but they're looking for a guy to take his spot in the lineup. But we appreciate the folks that are joining us on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook, wherever you're joining us, not the spammer that is currently in our chat. We do not appreciate you being here. But let's talk about the Dodgers and Giants. The first game was Tuesday night, 3-1. The Dodgers win that one. We knew that was going to be a pitcher's duel, Julio versus Carlos Rodon. Rodon had been arguably the best pitcher in baseball up until that point. Dodgers got a little bit fortunate, I would say. They had 1 hit through the first 4 innings. That was a 2-run single by Chris Taylor that came after a walk, and a wild pitch. So they get 1 hit in the first 4 innings, but it was literally in the perfect spot. They jump ahead 2 runs there. They add an insurance run in the 8th. Craig Kimbrell has 2 guys reach in the 9th, but closes the door. But the storyline in this one was Julio Urías. 6 innings, 4 hits, no walks, 4 strikeouts, just 65 pitches. We're going to get into the Dylan Hernandez article and everything that he said. But before we do, Daniel, just from your perspective, Julio in that game on Tuesday night, the biggest game of the season, going up against the best pitcher, like I said, a guy you could argue had been the best pitcher in baseball up until that point, and Julio showed up.
Yeah, I thought he was great, and I think he's been great, pretty much since his first start of the year. I know the velo's been down, a tick, but, that's not a huge concern this early in the year. Like, as the year goes on, I think his velo will tick up. But yeah, I mean, Julio's a guy who... You mentioned the Dylan Hernandez article, but I personally think he's a guy that this organization has a lot of trust in. They know what they're going to get out of him every 5th day, and with him, it's just about keeping him healthy. So I think that's what the idea in mind was, taking him out after 66 pitches there. That might have been a bit premature. Like, I probably would have sent him out there for at least 1 more inning. I thought he was pretty much cruising at that point, but at the same time, we witnessed last year, like his, if he's throwing 200 regular season innings, then you might see, the repercussions of that in the postseason, and he might run out of gas a little bit. And we know they like to use him in all sorts of roles in October. Yep. And if you want to do that, that means you have to keep him fresh throughout the course of the regular season. So on a night like that night where you could get, you could still get 6 innings out of him, but he's only throwing 66, 67 pitches. And the bottom line is you won the game. I think you got to look at that as a good thing, not a bad thing.
And there's lots of ways that you could go with the Julio story. Let's talk about the Dylan Hernandez piece. If you missed it, Dylan Hernandez of the LA Times wrote a piece, I believe it was the next day, essentially saying the Dodgers don't believe in Julio Urías. That has become clear. Here's a quote from it. Dave Roberts can say whatever he wants, so can baseball operations president Andrew Friedman. No longer can they conceal what they think of Urías. They don't trust him. At least not how they trust, say, Walker Buehler. The Dodgers once championed the former teenage prodigy as a future franchise cornerstone, but now they use him as if he's a 4th starter. Roberts has called him a superstar, but treats him as if he's the kind of overpriced and broken down pitcher Friedman used to like to sign. That was Dylan Hernandez there. And it's absurd. I mean, every line in this thing is absurd. Comparing him to Walker Buehler and that whole thing, it feels like a trying to get into the politically incorrect race conversation about Urias versus Buehler, which is uncomfortable because it feels forced. And to say that he doesn't trust him, I mean, when the article came out, I retweeted it and I said, yeah, it's hard to believe they don't trust the guy that they trusted to get the last 9 outs of Game 7 of the NLCS and the last 7 outs of Game 6 of the World Series, the guy that was literally on the mound when they won the World Series less than 18 months ago. They don't trust him. I wonder what Dylan Hernandez thinks about how they feel about Clayton Kershaw. They must not trust Clayton Kershaw because they took him out, during his perfect game sort of appearance. So, the whole thing is ridiculous. And we could get into the numbers here. I mean, if you want to talk about why did Urias come out in that game, yes, he just threw 65 pitches. He had no walks. He had 4 hits. He had 4 strikeouts. You look at it, he had a 47% hard hit rate in that game. 4 of the last 7 balls in play against him were all hard hits. A 5th ball was at 94 point something. So basically you had 5 of the last 7 balls put in play against him were all over 94 miles an hour. The last 8 guys he faced all put the ball in play. We could talk about the velocity, which is down to 92.1 miles an hour. It was 92.1 miles an hour on the night. That's a full 2 miles an hour down from last year, even a tick below this season's average. Every other pitch he had was down in velocity. If you look at on the season, his curveball is down a mile an hour. His changeup is down more than a mile an hour. His sinker almost 2 miles an hour. And so I think you could look at the game and say, yes, the box score looked good, but everybody was putting it in contact. He wasn't missing bats, and a lot of that contact was loud. So you just take him out of the game before you can. You could sprinkle in a little. They need to get the bullpen some use. I mean, they got to the point where some guys hadn't pitched in so long, they just needed to get them into games. They knew they had another off day up. So I just think the article is ridiculous. The idea the Dodgers don't trust Urias is ridiculous, and I assume you agree.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree. And I'm glad you brought up that point of he was giving up some hard contact, because I honestly had forgot about that as 2 days ago. But he was, towards the end of that start, guys were hitting. They were fortunate that a lot of the balls were right at guys, and he was still getting outs. But it wasn't. He didn't have a no hitter going. It wasn't like you said, the Kershaw thing. What are you gonna say? They don't trust Kershaw either because they took him out. No, it has nothing to do with that. I think there's an argument to be made that the Dodgers trust Julio more than any other pitcher on the roster, and we saw that in October. You didn't see Walker Buehler coming out of the bullpen in the 8th inning of a 1-run game, but they felt comfortable enough to do that with Julio, on his bullpen day or whatever you want to call it. They tried to use him as much as possible when it mattered most. To say it's due to a lack of trust, to me, to me, you're just looking for drama there.
Yeah.
The Dodgers are winning games. You gotta find something, I guess, if you're a writer like Dylan. So I don't want to pile on him too much, but yeah, I'm with you. I thought that article was bogus. I think in the long run, we saw last year with this starting rotation how 2 or 3 injuries here or there,
yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're having multiple bullpen games per week. So I think the Dodgers want to avoid that. They're being proactive instead of reactive. If you can manage guys' workloads in April and May and also win games while doing it, why would you not do that? That makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I can't stress enough, 5 of the last 7 balls that had been put in play against him were 94 miles an hour or higher on the exit velocity chart. 8 guys in a row put the ball in play, so he's not missing bats. So you could make, I could make 5 different compelling, logical arguments for why they did what they did. Shorten spring training. They want to lengthen his season. They need to get bullpen guys some reps. His box score maybe wasn't fully indicative of how he was actually pitching on the day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And even as good as Julio was, you could make a compelling argument that the guys they were going to bring in the 7th, 8th, and 9th were even better options for those individual innings than Julio was. And so, again, I joked with you beforehand, the LA Times, Bill Plaschke. I'm not the biggest fan of Bill Plaschke. I think he writes garbage pieces to just sort of rile people up and acts like a guy that maybe isn't following this stuff. Maybe they needed another one. Maybe Dylan Hernandez. So they were like, hey, do a little Plaschke here and say that the Dodgers don't like Julio Urías. It's a ridiculous idea. And yeah, I mean, I don't know Dylan. I don't know what his motivation was. I shouldn't assume what it was, but I just think this was such a bogus piece. This is such a And for a guy at the LA Times, of all places, to post something like that with no sources, it's not like he's saying sources tell me the Dodgers don't like him. He's just doing his own personal interpretation of something completely unfair in my estimation.
And also, just to close that, I thought he also made like the point that like they're already telling everyone that they're gonna let him go in free agency 2 years from now. Like that's a crazy stretch if you ask me. Like I don't think anyone is thinking about free agency from 2 years from now when we're in May of 2022.
Yeah, crazy stuff. But I mean, hey, to bring it back full circle, Julio, he got the job done. Even if you look at all that and you look at the 47% hard hit, you say that's not great. But he got the job done. I've always joked the 9 outs he got in the NLCS, the 7 outs he got in the World Series that year, like there were no strikeouts. Like it was a bunch of guys putting the ball in play. And, sometimes it's just fortunate. You can limit hard contact and it works out for you. But Julio able to do that. The Dodgers win Tuesday's game 3-1. They come back Wednesday and staying on the starting pitching train because I think that was the most interesting theme from this series. Tony Gonsolin gets the ball in the Wednesday game, and the Dodgers played coy all week. We don't know who the starting pitcher is going to be, and Dave even hinted, maybe we're just doing a little bit of gamesmanship here. Gonsolin was slated to start, but they made a point of not announcing, at least publicly, that Gonsolin was going to be the guy that was going to start until Wednesday morning, I believe, was when the official announcement came down. Gonsolin does get the start on sort of the normal rotation. Everybody's still going to be on an extra day of rest moving forward. And let's start with this. Do you think the Dodgers were actually having conversations about whether Tony Gonsolin was going to make this start, or do you think this was entirely a gamesmanship thing?
I think Tony Gonsolin was always going to pitch. It was just a matter of if he was going to start or not. Like we've seen in the past, the Dodgers have used the opener. We know the Giants lineup is very platoon heavy. Like we saw Jock Peterson was leading off against Tony. We see Brandon Crawford's up there, Mike Yastrzemski. They got all these lefties that if you wanted to, like you could start an Alex Vesia or something, and then you kind of force their hand. Like, do they still want to leave Jock up there? Do they want to have Jock out of the lineup and then be burned as a pinch hitter? So I think that's kind of more what they were thinking. Like Tony Gonsolin's a guy who has, he's both started and come out of the bullpen, so it wouldn't be completely unfamiliar to him. So I thought it would have made some sense to go with a lefty opener and then go to Gonsolin in the second or third inning and get four innings out of him or whatever. Like already you're not going to get a ton of length out of Gonsolin. I think like five innings or whatever. That's pretty much the maximum length he's going to go. So because of that, you can utilize the opener. I think a lot of it was gamesmanship too. Like we've seen the Giants and Gabe Kapler, they've been talking a lot about how, they're not going to be following the unwritten rules this year. They're trying to get an edge however they can. So maybe that was the Dodgers' way of kind of countering that or whatever. But I would have been fine with either. Like if they went with an opener, I would have understood the logic behind it. I'm totally fine with just sending Tony right out there like it's May 4th, whatever it is. Like I don't think we need to get super cute right now. And honestly, Tony rewarded them with a pretty solid outing.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to get to because you said, hey, I would be fine with an opener. I mean, my response to that is, at what point do we just trust Tony Gonsolin to be the fifth starter? Like, they're not toying with Tyler Anderson. They're obviously not toying with any of the big three. I was posting on Twitter when Matt and I did our show Monday, and I was like, wait, they haven't announced a starter for Wednesday? And it was like, to me, speaking of the Dylan Hernandez piece, that was going to be a moment to me where it was like, do you believe in Tony Gonsolin or not? This is a guy who's 27, who's only been in the major, he basically has essentially like, I don't even know, 150 total innings in his career or something like that. The results have been really, really good. I mean, the ERA is incredible. We know that storyline, and you could argue about, is it fair or unfair for him to have that ERA? Is that a justifiable? Does that match up with the performance? But to me, I don't like the idea that we're even talking about an opener on Tony Gonsolin days. If it's up to me, make Tony Gonsolin the fifth starter. Hand him the ball every fifth day and say, you're our guy, because he has proven it in and out. I mean, we can get to this performance, but in his last 3 starts this season, well, let me go back. This year, he has a 1.64 ERA, a 1.09 whip, and 18 strikeouts in 17 innings pitched. His last 3 starts, 15 innings, 12 base runners, 3 earned runs, 13 strikeouts. He's had his 2 best starts of the season against Atlanta and San Francisco. You want to go StatCast here. He's 96th percentile in hard hit percentage, 92nd percentile in barrel rate. He's in the top 25% in every expected number. And again, this is a guy who's just 27, who's been on top 100 prospect lists. He has been successful. To me, my only issue is just give the guy the ball. Show him you believe in him. And maybe, for all we know, they were telling him behind the scenes the whole time, you're our guy. Don't worry about it. We're going to go out. We're going to tell people we don't know. But I wish they would just look at him and give him a chance for once in his career to be the number 5 starter, to not be looking over his shoulder like, give us 3 innings. Treat him like a starter. He's gone 6 innings once this year. Like, it's not like he's pitching less innings than Tyler Anderson or any of these guys. So treat him like the number 5 starter. That's my opinion.
I hear what you're saying, and I think, outside of this start, like, they have been doing that. Like, he's been making every start. Like you said, he's gone 6 innings, so it's not like they're pulling him out after 3 or whatever. But I think, to me, like, I think if they would have gone with an opener or something, I think it would have had more to do with the Giants and less to do with Gonsolin. Like, it would have had to do with the Giants having a very platoon-heavy lineup and trying to force their hand a bit. Like when going back to the playoffs last year and back to Julio, like, I don't think the Dodgers going with an opener in that game and bringing Julio out of the bullpen had to do with a lack of trust in Julio. I think it just had to do with the Giants lineup is very platoon heavy and you want to get every advantage you can. So I think if Tony Gonsolin pitches innings 2 through 6 instead of 1 through 5, I don't think that shows a lack of trust in him. I just think that's trying to put him in the best position to succeed, where you could get the 3 big lefties out of the way in the first inning with a lefty reliever. Gonsolin comes in against the bottom of the order, kind of gets on a roll a little bit, and then goes through the whole lineup. I think if, let's say, they would have skipped Gonsolin altogether and gone with like a straight bullpen game and said Gonsolin's being pushed back, he's starting the opener against the Cubs, who's obviously a much weaker opponent, then I think there would be some merit there to saying, all right, like at a certain point, we got to just trust this guy. Like, we're in May here. We don't need to be skipping starts, going with the bullpen game, taxing our bullpen game. But I think ultimately, I think they made the right decision. I think starting him was the best way to go. Like you said, even if they were telling him behind the scenes the whole time, like, hey, you're starting, I just think the fact that they actually, went with that and let him start, that could only do good things, for his confidence. And obviously he turned in a great outing. So it's hard to question the decision when he goes out and pitches 5 really good innings.
Yeah, and real quick, I mean, and this is all in hindsight, so we could talk about whatever, but for his career, he is holding left-handed hitters to a 198 batting average against him, a 184 righties. He has given up less home runs to lefties than he has to righties. So lefties are hitting him slightly better than righties, but 283 on-base percentage, 325 slugging percentage, so it's not like he's one of these guys that has big splits. But let's talk about the actual game. 5 innings pitched, 3 hits, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts, 1 earned run, 65 pitches, so the exact same number that Julio throws the night before. A hard hit percentage rate that's much lower, 31% hard hit rate, a 26% strikeout rate. The fastball was up a little bit, 93.2 mile an hour average there, which is a tick above his season average. I thought it was interesting going through the Baseball Savant page. He threw 26 sliders. 14 of them were swung at, 7 of them were whiffed on. So basically, 50% whiff rate when they're swinging at a slider, which this is a guy that you think of as fastball changeup. If he can mix in a breaking ball that's somewhat effective, that's impressive. And so taking away the conversation about should he have started, should he not have started, what did you make of his actual performance? Again, 5 innings pitched, 1 earned run, 5 strikeouts, just 4 base runners allowed.
Yeah, I definitely I think getting that many swing and misses on his slider is a good sign, because like you said, he's mainly just fastball and his split change or whatever you want to call it. That pitch is filthy, first of all. Like, he was throwing that, guys weren't even coming close to it. So if you could mix in the slider too, that's only going to help you, go through lineups 3 times, get deeper into games. So that's a good sign there. And Tony Gonsolin, he's kind of an anomaly, because like when you're watching him pitch, you're like, he's not pitching that good, but then
the results are always there.
There's 1 run scored or something. Like he manages to limit damage. Like, I think the Giants had the leadoff man on base, like in the last 5 or 6 innings or whatever it was. Like, it felt like he was pitching around traffic all day. So I don't know how sustainable that is, but at the same time, like, it's kind of been the theme for him his entire career now. So he seems to make it work. And I think, if you're looking across baseball at like 4th or 5th starters, I don't think you'll find one that's pitching better than he is right now.
Yeah, 1.64 ERA again in 22 innings pitched this year. That lowers his career ERA to 2.68. So, I mean, it's like you say, at some point, the sample size, you look at it and say there's 164 innings. That's not a big sample size, so we still need more. But, people that are worried about it's going to catch up with him, it's going to catch up with him. I mean, it just hasn't yet. It might someday. The expected numbers on him are not always great. But I said so far, top 25% in expected, ERA, expected on-base percentage, expected slugging percentage, etc. He's 96th percentile in hard hit percentage, 92nd percent in barrel rate. It's fun looking through the comments here and just seeing sort of some people that I think are feeling the exact same things that we are. Some people that are supportive of Gonsolin and impressed by what he's done. Matty Man says Gonsolin has proven himself to me. Matt R. Ditto here with Gonsolin. That's kind of thing. Somebody had a funny joke here. I think Dylan Hernandez was high when he wrote his piece. It makes more sense if he meant that Tony Gonsolin was who they didn't trust and not Julio Urías. So, who knows? I'm not going to comment on that one. But yeah, 60XAM says, I don't know how much more Tony needs to prove that he's good. Derek says, not understanding the Tony Gonsolin doubts as a pitcher. MH, Catman top 5 in ERA. Craig, the Catman has been good. Matty Man, I was skeptical of Gonsolin, not anymore. So, look, I mean, I'm not going to be the guy that says I completely understand. I don't understand anybody that's skeptical. You look at stuff like fielding independent pitching, which is a little bit supposed to be a predictive stat. He had a 4.54 FIP last year. So you compare that, if he threw a 4.5 ERA, none of us would be talking about him the way that we are. But again, his career FIP is 3.58, which is a really, really good, sort of respectable mark for a guy who has 164 innings. But Wednesday, let's shift. Gonsolin was on the pitching side, but the offense was really the story of that particular night. The Dodgers end up scoring 9 runs. Everybody on the team except for one guy got a hit. Do you remember who did not get a hit in that game? The hero from the night before. Chris Taylor. Came into the game with the highest batting average of anybody on the Dodgers team. Left that game. Freddie Freeman retook the lead, but he was the only guy without a hit. Max Muncy 2 for 4 with a home run. Justin Turner even lining a ball into right center field for a long single. Mookie Betts had a home run. So talk to me about the Dodgers offense and kind of, the big storyline that I think a lot of people are going to want to talk about at some point are Muncy, are Bellinger, Justin Turner, the struggles those guys have had. Muncy goes 2 for 4. Bellinger had, ripped the ball into the gap. Justin Turner gets a hit. Like, is this the type of thing that you think is, like, are we headed in the right direction here, or is this a blip on the radar for you?
I mean, it was definitely good to see them have a game like that. It feels like it's been a while since the offense really exploded. I think, to me, honestly, the biggest story of the offense is Mookie Betts. Yep. He's actually been pretty hot. He's got like an 1,000 OPS over his last 10 games or so. I think, as we've seen over the past, pretty much since he joined the Dodgers, like, the offense kind of comes and goes with him. Like, if he's setting the table at the top, hitting leadoff home runs, getting on base, causing havoc on the base pass, then this offense really goes with that. And obviously, you got Freddie behind him doing his thing. Trey's been driving in runs all year. So I think, Mookie Betts is the real story here. But like you said, it looked like some other guys might be starting to show at least a bit of a pulse. Like, I think Muncie and Turner, they've pretty much been like back-to-back in the lineup, kind of in the middle there all season, and I didn't even realize, but I knew they had both been bad, but both of them were like 0 for 17 or something.
They were combined. At one point they were combined 0 for their last 31, I believe.
Yeah, so that's rough when you got those two guys back-to-back, just giving 2 free outs every time. But Muncie gets the hit to right field, and then he comes up and goes the other way for a homer. That's obviously a great sign. Justin Turner goes the other way for a base hit. I think he's got a long way to go still. It's nice to see him get 1 hit, but there's still a lot of guys that have been struggling. But I think it's a good sign to see that this team could still win games when their offense is not clicking on all cylinders. Like, they have, sometimes it might just be 2 or 3 guys that kind of carry them for a night. And obviously, with how great the pitching's been, like, it's not like you need to put up 7 to 9 runs every night. So I think it's good that we're sitting here talking about how guys are clearly not clicking the numbers offensively. If you look at individual guys, like, up for a lot of guys, it's not good. But at the same time, the Dodgers are still winning and they're still scoring runs. So I think this team's going to be even more scary when you see guys like Justin Turner get it going, when you see Max Muncy really get it going. Cody Bellinger, he's been kind of hit or miss, but he has had a week where he was the best player in the National League. So who knows? Maybe he gets hot again. I think the point is that they have so much depth that they don't all have to be going at the same time.
Yeah, looking at Mookie Betts real quick. I mean, at the end of the day on April 26th, his batting average was 190. Since then, he has gotten a hit in 6 straight games. 3 of those are multi-hit games. That batting average is all the way up to 247, on base at 350. The slugging percentage creeped over 400 for the first time. And so, look, a 762 OPS for Mookie Betts is not what you're hoping for. But when you consider that has gone up 116 points in basically a week, you'll take the trajectory that is on. I'm with you. I mean, I guess you and I maybe haven't had this conversation at length. Between Bellinger, between Muncie, and between Turner, throw those 3 guys in a category of concerned or not concerned. How would you sort those 3 out?
I'd say at Muncie, I'm the least concerned about him.
We're on the same page on that one.
Yeah, I think he's still drawing his walks. He's still getting on base, so that's a good sign. I'd say Cody Bellinger is probably second on the list for me. Like, I'm obviously a little concerned about him just because, he was the worst player in baseball
just a small sample size of the last 18 months of his life.
Yeah, it's been pretty bad. So I'm a little concerned about him, but at the same time, see the balls he's running down in center field every night.
Yep.
He's playing Gold Glove defense out there, and with that, he's still bringing value. A ton of value, honestly, with his defense, and he's gotten a few timely hits, so you'll take that. I think Justin Turner is probably the guy you're most concerned about, just because not only is the offense not there right now, but he doesn't provide much defensively either. So he's basically, at this point, he's DHing like every other day pretty much. And if you're not hitting, then how are you contributing? So yeah. I'm not ready to say that Justin Turner should be released or they need a trade for an all-star third baseman. I know some people have suggested that. I'm not there yet, but at the same time, I definitely, we talked about this last week, like Edwin Rios should be getting some more at-bats. Hunter Alberto's been hitting lefties, for the last couple weeks. I think he should be getting playing time against lefties. So I definitely think if you got to give Justin Turner an extra day or 2 off per week, maybe that helps get him going, helps preserve his legs a little. But I'd say on the concern meter, he's the highest.
Yeah, okay. I'm just looking at this. THP says not concerned on Bellinger, kind of concerned on Muncie, very concerned on Justin Turner. I think the Turner very concerned is sort of the most concerned, I guess we'll put it in that category. I think there is. That seems to be the consensus. And I've been on that one, fortunately or unfortunately, sort of early on in the process, just saying, I don't like what I'm seeing here in the age. And, so hopefully we turn that corner and at some point that comes on. I mean, again, I sort of poked a hole through the line drive that Cody Bellinger had yesterday. Everyone wanted to get fired up about what a great at bat it was. And I was like, I don't know. I saw him swing at one breaking ball that was, bounced in front of home plate. And then he lines a fastball right down the middle into right center field. Like, I'm not, like, impressed by that. It's better than nothing. He didn't foul it off. But, whereas Justin Turner, I think his at-bat, it was solid contact, ropes it into right center field. And so I'm not convinced that's going to turn the corner. But with Muncie, I just think it's going to come. First of all, the walk rate has not diminished. That's one of the things. I won't rehash my whole Justin Turner thing, but strikeout rate, career high, walk rate, career low. 37 years old. Bad combination of things right there. Max Muncy, the walk rate, one of the best in baseball, coming off of an injury, so you've got sort of a built-in excuse for why this might be. And when I say coming off an injury, it hasn't healed yet. It's healing as we go, and he's learning how to deal with it. He's playing a new position, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think we're on the same page there. Let's get to some...
something real quick, something we talked about last week, and it's kind of happening. We said Will Smith should be hitting 4th, and now we've had 3 straight games where he's hitting 4th. Justin Turner's, they're moving him down in the 6th, 7th spot. So I think that's all good, good to see. Like, there's definitely a lot less pressure when you're batting 7th or 8th compared to 4th or 5th.
Yeah. Did you know, Daniel, that since they moved Will Smith to the cleanup role, do you know what the Dodgers record is? You're not going to believe this. They haven't lost. They haven't lost yet.
Yeah.
3-0. Oh. I believe Sunday was the first time they moved in there. But yeah, it makes sense. And hey, I joked that I wanted to at some point. I call Will Smith Bill. I'm the only person. That's perfectly fine. I'm not expecting anybody to catch on to this. But when they signed Freddie Freeman, I was like, oh, there's a Bill and Fred joke in there, sort of a play on Bill and Ted. And I think it was either you or Matt. Someone was like, well, I mean, Will Smith's not going to be hitting close enough to the top, blah, blah, blah. So we're still not there yet. We've still got second and fourth, and it is kind of a little bit out of order. But we might get to a Bill and Fred kind of a moment here at some point where they go back to back. And you better believe I'm going to have that tweet ready to go, just ready to fire that bad boy off. Let's get to some questions here. If folks have some questions, throw those in the chat. We'll get to Peaksville joining us. We got some on Twitter. Daniel, I do need to break some news to you that Corey Knebel, your boy, absolutely got shelled tonight.
I was just watching that right before we started the show. It was unfortunate. Mets came back from down 7-1 in the ninth.
Yeah.
It's must not be fun being a Phillies fan because the Corey Knebel we saw, he didn't have an outing like that all year. So that's rough. I feel like they'd throw money at relievers, try to fix their bullpen problem every year, and every year they wind up with the worst bullpen in the league. That's
comes
tough.
into a 7-3 game. Runners at first and third. By the time he ends that inning, it is 8-7 Mets, and Diaz shuts it down in the ninth. So Daniel's former boy, Corey Knebel, rough one. Hopefully not on your fantasy squad.
No, I don't do closers.
Oh, okay. The opposite strategies here.
That's the reason, because they're just too frustrating for me. Too many of them blow saves, so I'd rather just get started.
Fair enough. All right, let's get to some questions. We got a couple here submitted to us on Twitter. Kevin at BlueGoon82 submitted a few different ones, so we could just fire through some of these real quick. If Justin Turner is done as a starter, you and I are not saying, by the way, that we think Justin Turner is done as a starter. I think that leash is going to be incredibly wrong. But if I were to reword this, if Justin Turner were to see a slight decrease in his playing time, who do you think replaces him at designated hitter, assuming Muncie is primarily playing third base? Is it Rios? Is it Miguel Vargas or Michael Busch, a guy they call up from AAA? Hanser Alberto is the other guy kind of on the roster already. Zach McKinstry, a guy who's crushing it at AAA and who's been back and forth. So who would you expect to see kind of get the most increase in plate appearances if Justin Turner were to see his playing time slip a little bit?
Yeah, I definitely think it would be Edwin Rios. First of all, he's a lefty, so he could start against righties. I don't know. You're probably not going to start him against too many lefties, but then you have Hanser Alberto, who's been performing well against lefties. So there's just kind of a natural platoon right there. I don't think they're in any sort of rush to call up a Miguel Vargas or Michael Busch, even though, they've been absolutely tearing it up in the minor leagues. Like, it feels like Michael Busch is hitting a homer every other day. So those guys are doing great, which is great to see. But I also don't think they're in a rush to call them up to have, a part-time role, DH a few days maybe. So I don't think I wouldn't expect to see those guys until maybe like August or so at the very earliest, if then, if even then. So I would expect, the guys they have, like you said, McKinstry is the other guy who's kind of been up and down a little bit. So, maybe they're an injury away from Zach McKinstry, kind of jumping into the mix there. But I think it's Edwin Rios for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking up some of these guys' minor league stats so far. Michael Busch, as you said, his stats are ridiculous. 20 games played, 70 at-bats. He's got an OPS of 1.117 with 8 home runs. The caveat to all of that is that he's doing it at AA. So you're talking about a guy that would have to see a jump of 2 levels, which, I wouldn't say is completely unimaginable, but I wouldn't say it's sort of the common expectation. Miguel Vargas, looking at his numbers really quick. Again, another guy he's at AAA. OPS of 844 with 3 home runs in 25 games. So at least he's a little bit closer to the major leagues as far as a level. But then you look at Zach McKinstry's numbers. I haven't looked in a bit, so I don't know if he's slumping of late. But 2022, 954 OPS, 338 batting average so far. That's through 17 games. He's got 1 home run, 4 triples, and 3 doubles as well. So, McKinstry would seem to be the guy if you were calling someone up, but I'm with you. I mean, the beauty of this Dodgers team is that Edwin Rios and Hanser Alberto are dramatic upgrades over what they had last year. And I mean, all respect to Albert Pujols. I thought Albert Pujols was actually like a respectable off-the-bat bench. I didn't hate any time that he came up. I actually had faith in him. But besides him, I mean, it was a black hole. Hanser Alberto, I think he's hitting like 290 so far this season. So he's doing his part. Edwin Rios has yet to really make the loud contact that we're used to there. But I'm with you. First of all, both of us are saying we don't think that decrease in playing time is coming anytime soon. And second of all, the answers are probably in-house. Because again, I mean, it's not like they've got spots on the roster to just add somebody there. So
you also got Jake Lamb if you need him. Obviously, that would require a 40-man roster move, but he's been I don't think he's been great in AAA, but we obviously know he had the great spring training. He's been in the big leagues before. He could play third base. So if there's an injury or something, that's also another option. That it's good to just have those depth guys that you could just kind of stash in AAA. And if you need them, great. If you don't, so be it.
Yeah, and the other guy is Kevin Pillar. I'm not the biggest Kevin Pillar guy in the world, but people have pointed out to me. So Lamb, so far in 22 games, he's got an OPS of 790 with 5 home runs, which is fine. Like if they called him up, I don't think anyone would bat an eye. But again, you look at Zach McKinstry and what he's doing, and then Pillar's got a 997 OPS with 5 home runs in basically the same amount of games. So same number of home runs, dramatically higher OPS. So, it's not like they're looking for somebody to play the field, although Jake Lamb, maybe a little more positional similarities to what Justin Turner would do. Let's see. Okay, some more questions here. We'll get to Kevin asked a couple, so we'll throw in here. Is there a front of the rotation starter that is gettable to help the rotation? So is there a front of the rotation starter the Dodgers could acquire via trade? Some context here. One thing of note is that John Heyman just came out with a piece in the New York Post. Obviously, Trevor Bauer, 2-year suspension, that he is appealing. Heyman indicated that had Bauer agreed to a deal with Major League Baseball, that he probably would have gotten 99 games as time served already for time that has passed. He decided not to go that route. He maintains that he is innocent. Of course, a third accuser came out through a newspaper on the day that suspension came. But the reason I bring all of that up is because Bauer's money comes off the books as long as he is suspended. The Dodgers don't have to pay him. And Heyman kind of said, imagine this Dodgers team with more money to go out and spend if they needed to. I've said all along that would mostly come at the form of a trade deadline. Maybe they have some more flexibility to go get a guy. We don't know who's available, not available. We can guess based on the standings. Is there a starter out there? The Dodgers don't need a front-of-the-line guy, but is there a playoff starting pitcher caliber guy out there that you think the Dodgers could go and get possibly?
Yeah, I think the name that immediately comes to mind is Luis Castillo. He hasn't pitched this year. He just finished up a rehab assignment. He's about to make his season debut on Monday. We obviously know the Reds are not off to a very strong start. They're actually off to a historically bad start, and I don't see that turning around. So they're clearly going to be sellers at the deadline. And when I say sellers, I use that term loosely just because I don't think they have a whole lot that people want to buy right now. So the one guy they could actually trade some value for is Luis Castillo. So I would expect him to be dealt for sure. We obviously got to see he's going to make his season debut this week, and we'll see how healthy he is. But when he's healthy, he's probably one of the top number 2 type starters in baseball. I'd say I wouldn't quite put him on that top tier, but I think he'd be a great addition. Another guy who's probably going to be out there is Frankie Montes. Obviously, we'll see how things go in Oakland, but I don't expect them to be competing for a lot of the year, even though they've done pretty well so far. But Frankie Montes is pitched pretty well so far this year. They already traded Sean Manaea, so he'll probably be on the block as well. There's 2 options right there, but I'd have to do some more digging. It's May 5th here. I'm not exactly too locked in on who's going to be traded, in July. Obviously, we'll talk more about that as it gets closer, but there's 2 names that are for sure going to be out there, and I think would be worthwhile upgrades to the point where it's like you're not just acquiring a back of the rotation starter. Those are impact type guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Luis Castillo seems the obvious one. Passon tweeted, do you think the Reds are tanking? I look at their offseason, I think they just suck. They went out and signed guys. They signed a guy for $8.5 million. They traded for Mike Minor, who was making more than the guy they sent out. I just think they're really bad.
Yeah, they traded away Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suarez, but outside of that, it's not. They traded Sonny Gray away too, so they did trade some talent away, but at the same time, they were never working with a whole lot to be. And we'll see, they're as bad as they are now. Wait till the second half of the season once they trade away Luis Castillo and who knows what. Maybe they have another Tommy Pham has a decent year and winds up getting traded at the deadline. Wait till they do that, then we'll see how bad they really could be.
Yeah, because somebody pointed out, with the Winker and Suarez trade, they're it's possible they were trying to just get rid of Suarez, and Suarez isn't any good. Winker might have been the price to get rid of it, and they got some guys back. So Anyways, okay, some other questions. Steven asked me a random question. Do you know if your home is an Eichler by any chance? I had to Google what that is. Apparently, that's an architect. I have no idea if my home is an Eichler. I Googled that. First I thought like that was a complaint about the noise my microphone was making or something like that. But no idea there. So sorry I can't help you there, Steven, but I appreciate the question. Like I said, I just Googled that, and I'm learning what an Eichler is. Richard Taylor asked this on Facebook. All-star predictions for the Dodgers, ? Or is it too early? It's a funny question for me because probably too early. I mean, I ask because I'll rephrase it. My bold prediction was that the Dodgers would set a record for the most All-Stars that the Dodgers have ever had on one team. I think that number was 7. And I kind of went through guys that I thought, would be automatics. I mean, I think Freddie Freeman's probably an All-Star. I think that's the safest bet that the Dodgers have, the trajectory that this is heading on. I don't know. I mean, look, we can talk about how bad the Dodger hitting is. Everybody's hitting is terrible. The Dodgers have the best ERA in baseball. So I think Walker Buehler is probably on track to be an all-star type guy. Julio, I think is going to be in that conversation. If Craig Kimbrell, continues what he's doing just on name recognition alone, he's going to be in that conversation. So I guess, Mookie Betts, if you want to trajectory out what he's done the last couple of weeks, if he keeps that up. But Freddie Freeman's the only guy that I would feel really good about right now. Is that Will Smith? Will Smith, definitely. There you go. Freddie Freeman and Will Smith would be the two that I would say.
Just because, I feel like
Kershaw.
As long as Kershaw's having like a solid enough season, he'll get in. The game's in LA. He's been around.
Yeah.
He's been in the league for so long. I feel like people are kind of growing more of an appreciation for him. So as long as he stays healthy, I think he'll be in. We could be looking at, potentially 3 starting pitchers with Kershaw, Buehler, and, Julio if they all stay healthy. Out of the bullpen, I think Blake Trinan would have been probably the main candidate, but he's been out now, so he's probably won't make it. Craig Kimbrell, we'll see. Like he hasn't pitched enough to say, and he honestly, I know his number, like his ERA was good, but I wouldn't say pitched at an all-star level. Nope. So we'll see with that. And like you said, I think Freddie will make it. Mookie will probably make it. And then who knows? Chris Taylor's off to a good start. We'll see where that goes. Trey Turner, his overall numbers don't look great, but he's also maybe one hot week away from the numbers looking pretty good. So we'll see with him as well. So we could be looking at 6 or 7 guys, but like you said, offense is down as a whole right now. So we'll just have to kind of see where that goes in the next couple months.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and look, Kershaw. If it's in, it is in LA. If Kershaw makes the All-Star team and is even in remotely close to the conversation of the starter of the All-Star game, you'd have to imagine, even if the Dodgers aren't the guy picking them, the Braves get to pick all that sort of thing. But you'd have to imagine that Clayton Kershaw would be the favorite to be thrown out the first pitch of the All-Star game as a player. So there you go. King Yellowman says 3 Dodger All-Stars tops. I'm going to disagree with that one. I'm just going to go out on a limb.
Yeah,
I'll take the over. King Yellowman, if you want to set me a line on over 3, I will take the over 3.5 there any day. Taylor, you mentioned, is a good one. He was hitting 300 prior to yesterday's game. So you talk about the league average is like 220. There's not a whole lot of guys hitting 300. He was an all-star last year. God, if they could just figure out how to not 3 bounce every freaking relay throw that feels like it comes out of the outfield. Him and Lux. It's like if Lux is the cutoff man or if Taylor's trying to throw home, it's just like 3 hoppers to the plate. My goodness. Okay, let's get to some other questions. I think we had one other one. Let's see. Via Twitter. This was somebody asking about Trey Turner. This is a question we'll probably get all the time. This person says, unpopular opinion, I don't think we should extend Trey Turner. I question his power. His D is merely average, which I would say the D being average would be an overstatement thus far this season. Would you extend him if he wants Seager money? I could tell you he wants Seager money. I could tell you that unless this year is a total catastrophe, he will probably get Seager money because his numbers are far better than Corey Seager's from a career perspective as far as consistency, wins above replacement, that kind of a thing. We have bounced around on this one a little bit, but if Trey Turner came to the Dodgers right now and said, Daniel, I'm ready to, I want to talk extensions. Here's the numbers I want. I want, 10 years, $320 million, whatever Seager got. Are you handing that piece of paper and that pen over to Trey Turner to sign that contract?
10 years seems like a lot. Like Trey Turner, I'm pretty sure he's a year older than Seager, and he's also going to be hitting free agency a year later. So that's kind of a 2-year difference right there. So I'd give him the same, AAV at like 8 years and see if he wants to sign that or not. If he says no to that, I'd probably just let it go to free agency and see what happens there. But I wouldn't be too cautious to pay Trey Turner just because you don't have. It's not like there's like a ton of guys locked up long term. Like it's really just Mookie and Freddie Freeman, and outside of that, like there's no big money anywhere. Like you just got off Bauer, so you get that money back. You probably want to probably pay Walker Buehler. I'd say like when he gets to free agency, Cody Bellinger. That's kind of a wait and see type of thing. Julio obviously is another guy you'd like to keep, but we'll see. That's
They don't
2 years
believe in
down the
Julio
road.
though. Remember, Daniel? They don't believe in him. They're already tipping their hand.
Yeah, we could just count him as good as
Yeah,
on, I guess.
that's what Dylan tells me.
That's the news. So yeah, but the bottom line is you don't have a ton of guys locked up long term, so you could definitely afford to pay Trey. And also a second part of it, like, is if you don't, like, who's going to replace him? Like, there's not. If you look down the farm system, you see guys like Michael Bush, Miguel Vargas, Andy Pages, but you don't really see anyone that's like the heir apparent at shortstop. So I'd say that's the one position you're kind of lacking that you could afford to lock up a guy long term. I know Gavin Lux could slide over there if you had to. I know we're both not exactly fans of his defense. Chris Taylor, you could also slide over there if you have to. So you do have some insurance there, so you don't have to kind of overstep your boundaries. But at the same time, I think Trey Turner is a great player, and I think if you sign him to an 8-year deal and he gives you 5 good years or something, you take.
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it's interesting, the dead baseballs that we've been dealing with and the warning track power that we've seen. I sort of joked that, hey, a guy like Trey Turner, who's a hit for average kind of a guy, if this is, who knows? We have no idea what the baseballs are going, but it's funny because I'm like, hey, that makes Trey Turner probably a little more valuable. Now, you could argue his batting average is heavily influenced by his speed, which will decrease. So I'm with you. I think the biggest question is who replaces him. You mentioned Taylor. You mentioned Lux. I mean, the other guy that I think is worth having a conversation that most people probably not super familiar about is a guy that's on the 40-man roster, and that's Jacob Amaya. Amaya is down at Double-A. He's 23 years old, shortstop primary position. I'm not a prospect guy, but, just looking through the box score, this is a guy who at Double-A this year has a 1.160 OPS. He's got 6 home runs in 17 games thus far down at Double-A. I'd have to go look at some of the scouting reports from guys like Justin Lorber, but I feel like defense has always been sort of a positive. I think the question with him was he can play defense at the shortstop at the major league level. The question is, will he hit enough? Is he going to be like sort of a Cesar Torres type where maybe he's not that good defensively, but you kind of just hope you get to 270 batting average with no power and you just accept it? But again, I mean, 1.160 OPS with 6 home runs and 60 at bats so far at the Double-A level. So still a long ways away. Local kid from West Covina. But that would be a cool story. And who knows, that might be an option. I know there's another guy, a couple other infielders that are on that 40-man roster that nobody's expecting up this year. But I think that is ultimately a big question is who are you replacing him with? I think Chris Taylor, Gavin Lux, you could sort of make do for a year or two. There are other guys at the free agent level as well. But, you also make a great point about the money. If they don't have to pay Bauer next year, David Price comes off the books next year. Justin Turner, Max Muncie, I believe both of their contracts could be at least they're either over or there are team options, kind of player options kind of a thing. And so there's a way to and obviously Trey Turner's $22.5 million or whatever he's making in the final year of arbitration. There's money to be spent on that front because essentially other than Mookie and Freddie Freeman, the Dodgers don't have a ton of money tied up beyond those two guys. And hey, those are a couple guys that are good to get rid of. Isaiah says Trey Turner is Corey Seager without the power. I
don't think they're alike at all.
Yeah.
Trey Turner is a little faster than Corey Seager. He hits right-handed, but I mean, if he means they're both good, then yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to look. Trey Turner, let's see. Trey Turner had 28 home runs last year. Corey Seager had 16. Corey Seager played 95 games. So, I mean, Trey Turner had more home runs than Corey Seager last year. We could look at slugging percentages. 536 for Trey Turner. 521 for Corey Seager. So I don't know what to tell you. I mean, like, this is not an trust me, this is not an anti-Corey Seager podcast. I can assure you of that.
No, far from it. Far from it.
What were you going to say?
they're both great players. I was just gonna say Trey is a more durable player than Corey Seager.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, again, I think the question with Trey is, what will the speed look like 5 or 6 years from now? But I said all along that the Corey Seager contract scared me, terrified me actually. And who knows? I mean, with Correa not getting the money he thought, maybe the Seager contract is the outlier. And maybe it is,
Right.
the Trey Turner next year, that group. Because I think Trey Turner is a better player by a lot of metrics, and yet I think it's like, I'm not sure his market would be as wide ranging as a guy like Corey Seager, because there are more questions about what his game looks like 5 or 6 years from now. He sure seems to like it. I mean, I read an article in The Athletic about, I didn't realize that him and Rodon were roommates at NC State in college. But he was recruiting. He was trying to recruit Rodon to come to the Dodgers during free agency. So, I mean, obviously, Rodon essentially signed a 1-year deal, and if he keeps pitching the way he's pitching, he will be opting out of that and become a free agent. But who knows? The fact that Trey Turner was recruiting people to LA, even if it was just for the year, that tells me that he likes where he's at, that it's been a positive experience, that some of the, he wants to go back to the East Coast stuff is probably a little bit overblown. Let's see if we can get to one more question here. Man, that's a long one. I don't have time to read that and figure out what it says. Apologies. Ederico asks opinions on a fourth outfielder, Jeff and Daniel. I'm not sure if that's asking like a fourth guy on the roster to play outfielder. I assume Gavin Lux would be the fourth outfielder right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think outside of injuries, they'd be fine. Does he mean like trade for like a guy, or like call up like a...
Ederico, if you're in there and you want to clarify that one. Oh, you just re-asked the question again. Perfect. A few minutes ago. So why don't you clarify what you mean by that? Chances of Kevin Pillar was what he said. Maybe he's just talking about like who would be the fourth outfielder. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it earlier. Pillar's been great. 997 OPS at AAA, 5 home runs. I'm not a Kevin Pillar guy. We've been over that. I was like not the fired up guy when he signed with the Dodgers. I was like, he's the guy who makes diving catches, but all of his defensive metrics are actually not very good at all, and hasn't really ever been a good hitter at any point. And so I wasn't fired up about that. But hey, I was corrected, because I kept talking about Jake Lamb, and people are like, go look at Pillar's numbers. He's out hitting Jake Lamb at AAA, which is actually true. So Lamb has a much better track record at the major league level. His highs are much higher than Pillar's were, and yet this year at AAA, Pillar's been good. So both of those guys would need to be added to the 40-man, but whereas a month ago the idea of adding Pillar over Lamb seemed crazy to me, now if they did it, I think it would be justified based on what those guys are doing on the field.
Yeah, and I think both of those guys, it's good to just kind of have them stashed at AAA, so that when an injury does happen, you could call them up and get at least like league average type production, where last year you were getting guys who, couldn't even hit the ball. But yeah, I'd say like if there's an injury in the outfield, it probably would be Pillar called up. If there's an injury in the infield, it probably would be Lamb. So I guess they're just kind of in wait and see mode until that happens, and hopefully keep mashing at AAA.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to say, by the way, there was one guy that I always believed in last year off of the Dodgers bench. Do you remember who I always believed in? The guy that always said, I don't know, there's something about the way he competes, the way he takes at bats. I just think there's something there. Sheldon Noisy, and I feel slightly vindicated thus far in Oakland, hitting .313 so far this season in 27 games. And you could go back and check the tape. I always was like, I did something here. The competitive at bats. I feel like he got robbed a little bit, but I
was completely out on Sheldon Noisy after that one play at second base against the Giants.
I had his back. I had his back. Put in an unfair position.
After that, I was completely out, and so let him go rake in Oakland. That's totally fine.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, weighted runs created plus of 149 for Sheldon Noisy. Already put up 0.7 wins above replacement. He's probably the best player on the A's. You want to talk about a team, unlike the Reds, that is actively tanking. Good Lord, the Oakland A's are an absolute joke. 2,300 fans or something a day that are chilling in Oakland and going to those games. So, hey.
They got to go join your Raiders in Vegas.
Or come to Portland, baby. Portland baseball. Let's go. We'll set you up downtown. We'll get you a jersey. We'll get you a stadium. We'll make it happen. They're trying to bring baseball to Portland, so we'll see. Well, hey, folks, we appreciate you joining us again. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you're watching us on Facebook, joining us via Twitter, if you're listening to this after the fact via podcast on Apple or Google or Spotify, we appreciate you joining us. If you haven't already, please check out our podcast. We greatly appreciate if you would subscribe, rate, and review. We need a bunch of reviews kind of right off the gate, so to sort of get on the radar a little bit. So if you would subscribe or follow and then give us a rating, leave us a review, we would greatly appreciate that. Of course, if you're checking us out on YouTube and you have not subscribed yet, now is a great time to do that. Ring the notification bell. We've got content coming to you every single day of the week, Monday through Friday. A couple long-form shows a week. This is usually what we'll do is a Monday long-form show and then a live post-game show. But looking ahead to this weekend series, which we didn't even get to, by the way. I had all sorts of stuff on the Cubs. I'll do it briefly here in a second. But 11:20 a.m. games on Friday and Saturday. So I'm not sure the two.
It's supposed to rain.
Yeah, and terrible weather.
It's supposed to rain. So we'll see. That game might get banged, and it could be a doubleheader Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah. So rather than do a 2 p.m. live post game show, we decided we'd do the 7:10 on the off day. So we appreciate you guys checking that out. Checking us out, joining us tonight. But yeah, looking ahead to the Cubs, I had notes in here, so I'll just share them really quick. Cubs are 9-15 on the season. They've lost 11 of their last 14. Started out well, 6-4. Have lost 11 out of 14 since. Middle of the pack offensively, 16th in runs per game, 6th in on-base percentage. Pitching has not been strong, 24th thus far in ERA. Again, as I said, 11:20 a.m. games on Friday and Saturday. Sunday is the Sunday Night Baseball game on ESPN, so that's a 4 p.m. start. Tyler Anderson, Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler for the Dodgers. Cubs have not announced a Friday starter yet. Justin Steele on Saturday. He's got a 5.50 ERA. That's all I know about him. And Marcus Stroman on Sunday. He's got a 5.13 ERA. So Stroman versus Buehler, kind of the marquee matchup there on Sunday. But hopefully Dodgers, you'd like to see at least 2 out of 3. Yes, it's on the road. Yes, it's a weird time zone and some early morning games that might throw some things off. Yes, the weather might get a little wonky, but Anderson, Kershaw, and Buehler, 2 out of 3, I think, is fair. Daniel, you going to predict a sweep real quick before we go here?
Yeah, might as well, right? This Cubs team is not very good. I know the Dodgers have kind of struggled at Wrigley Field the last few years, but this is a very different Cubs team. Like, there's no Anthony Rizzo is mashing with the Yankees. Javi Baez, we just saw him with the Tigers, still killing the Dodgers. So all those guys who historically have actually done really well against the Dodgers are no longer in Chicago. So much different lineup there. The Dodgers are clearly a superior team. We saw the offense kind of break out the other night, so maybe that could kind of carry over. Weather permitting, we'll see how that is. But it's definitely 2 out of 3 at minimum, and hopefully they could get a sweep.
Absolutely. And somebody asking here, maybe Base Lord, who's just joining us, says, Daniel, where's the broom? The broom was here earlier. We did bring the broom out for the 2-game sweep of the San Francisco Giants. So there you go. The broom is there.
We shrunk up our windows a little, so now I got to hold it like real close to my face.
Beautiful. Just get in there. Get in nice and close. Hey, we're not strangers over there, There we go. Well, hey, folks, again, we appreciate you joining us as always. DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue1958. This has been DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. That's Daniel. My name's Jeff. We'll see you guys next time. Dodgers versus the Cubs this weekend, hoping to get a sweep.